What is going on, y'all? Gamers Goon here today, and today we are going to be going over the entire Big Ten and kind of the floors and ceilings of every single team. We are going to be doing all of the Power Four, the ACC, the Big 12, and then we are going to cap off this week on Thursday with the SEC, and then Friday will be my Week 0 predictions video. Obviously, my soccer content will also be out this week as well. But let's just get on into it. All right, so thankfully, they made it easy on me with a Big Ten schedule that looks like this. I hope that they have something for the other conferences. If not, well, I guess we might be screwed. But we're going to go in order. Illinois, we're looking at Illinois first. Obviously, you know I am a big Illinois fan. I'm going to be keeping tally on the side as well. Western Illinois, week 1. I think that is an easy victory. We're talking about floor. That's a game you have to win. We'll just talk about the games you have to win here, and then kind of the ceiling. And then expectations are probably you win a little bit more, right? But I think the minimum expectation is you got to beat Western Illinois. You have to beat Western Michigan. You look at Purdue, that's a must-win game. Then you look at Rutgers, Maryland, and Northwestern, all games that must be won. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, six must-win games. Now, obviously, you want better than that. And Illinois plays 12 games, so that would put them at 6-6, just bowl eligible. However, let's talk kind of about ceiling. I do expect Illinois to beat Duke, so that should be contributed in there, right? So that's 7 wins we can see. Indiana, I expect Illinois to be able to beat. So that ceiling will say the same thing for Indiana, right? I think Illinois is going to end up beating Indiana, but you also have to think of it on the other side. Indiana could win that game. But we're talking about ceiling, just games that I think Illinois could win. And they'll be somewhere in the middle, right? They're not going to, I don't think they're going to over jump or under go my range that I have them in. 6-6, I think, is a very low range for them. But you look at Indiana, that's a winnable game, so we'll have 8 there. USC, I think, is winnable. I do think they're tough, but I do think they're winnable. That is 9. Ohio State, I see as a loss. I don't really see much else there. I would love to say Illinois is going to beat Ohio State. It is a home game for Illinois, but I just don't see it happening. Then you look at Washington on the road, coming off a bye. I think you can win. And then Wisconsin on the road, also kind of sandwiched between Maryland and Northwestern, could get tricky, but also a winnable game. So I think really they're going to be somewhere in between that range of 6-6 and 11-1. I do kind of expect Illinois to maybe drop the USC game or the Indiana game. I expect probably them to finish around like maybe 9-3 if I were to have to wager a guess at this point. So the range we have Illinois at is somewhere in between 6-6 and 11-1. Kind of a wide margin, but if I had to like really narrow it down, I think I'd go somewhere in the middle, around like maybe 9 wins for Illinois. Next, we're going to Indiana. Let's look at Indiana's floor. And obviously Illinois and Oregon are the 2 teams like I'll know a lot more about. But Indiana, Old Dominion, Kennesaw, Indiana State, you should not drop any of those games. They shouldn't even be close. So there's 3. I think Maryland is a must-win for them, and Purdue. So I think really here it's kind of like Illinois. Their floor, I think theirs is a little less, because I do have a couple more tough games. The Iowas, the Penn States, the Oregons. I think UCLA can get. Oh, they do have Michigan State, which I didn't account for. I think they could be around 6. Their floor should be 6-6. Their floor should be 6-6 because I'm looking at Old Dominion, Kennesaw, Indiana State as must wins. Michigan State should be a must win. Maryland or UCLA, one of those 2 needs to be a must win. Both teams can be a little tricky at times, but I think you need to win one of those. And then Purdue should not be a problem. So really, they're just like Illinois. Could be around that 6-6 mark for their floor. We're looking at a potential Illinois beat. Being able to beat Illinois, so there's a 7. Iowa, I think there's potential. Oregon, I don't see it happening. Penn State, I don't see it happening. Wisconsin and UCLA could go either way, so I think really here Oregon and Penn State are their two toughest games, and the two games that I think they really just don't really stand a shot. So I'm going to say their ceiling this year is somewhere around the 10-2 range. They're once again in that 6-6, and then there's a slightly less peak than Illinois at 11-1. But their range, for me at least, is the minimum is going to be 6-6, and I think their maximum maxes out around 10-2. I do think that when I look at this schedule, you'll probably get somewhere around 7 or 8 wins. I don't know that they'll hit 10. Iowa, winnable game, but I think they'll end up. It could be a game they drop, if that makes sense. Iowa's tricky. Wisconsin can be tricky. UCLA with Nico Amaliava could be tricky. Illinois is going to be tricky. So there's a lot of tricky games on Indiana. So I don't know that they'll really hit that 10-2. But I think if they are able to win kind of those 50-50 games, they're going to be set at 10-2 because they're not beating Oregon and they're not beating Penn State. Never say never, but right now I just can't see it happening. Next we get to Iowa. I have no idea what logo that is. I think it's Alcorn State. Let's see. Is it Alcorn State? I can look on my phone for the Iowa football roster, not roster, schedule. No, it's Albany. It's Albany. Sorry, Albany fans. I'm sorry. So Albany, either way, should be a win. We're going to go for the floor yet again. UMass is an easy win. Minnesota can be tricky. Rutgers can be a little tricky. You got to win one of those. So I'll say 3 there. Or they should have at least 3. They have a tough schedule. Michigan State needs to be a win. This is crazy because I think Iowa's going to be a lot better than kind of what people think. But I'm going to say their floor is a 4-8 team. I think that's really where we're at, is a 4-win team, because I look at this schedule and I think of the games that I think they're guaranteed to win is Albany, UMass. I think they're going to win one of, maybe not both, of Minnesota and Rutgers, and they should beat Michigan State. Nebraska is kind of iffy. So yeah, 4-8 is their floor, which I feel is kind of disrespectful, but it's their floor. And I think they're going to easily pass that floor, because I don't think they beat Iowa State. They could beat Indiana. I don't think they beat Penn State. I don't think they beat Oregon. I think their ceiling is 9-3. I could see them beating USC, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, those teams. I think the ceiling is 9-3, very wide margin for them. And I think they'll probably, if I had to guess, for them specifically, I think it would probably be around, let's see here, 1, 2, 3. Like, I'm just in my head predicting the games. Like, Albany, they're going to win. UMass, Rutgers, I think, are going to win 3. I think they'll beat Minnesota 4. Michigan State, Nebraska 6. And then they have some tricky games. I think they'll probably have about. I think they might be like 7-5, if I had to make a guess. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt to the 9-3, because there's some 50-50 games there that could go their way. But if I had to like wager, I guess, with them, I think it'd be around that 7-8 win mark. Maryland. Let's kind of look at Maryland's floor and ceiling now. Maryland. And granted, everybody could technically have like a 12-0 ceiling. That's not realistic. We saw one team last year go undefeated in the regular season in Oregon, and they almost choked against Idaho and Boise State. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Especially in this era of football, it ain't going to happen. Maryland, I see some wins off the bat. The first 3 should all be wins. I think they win one of the Washington, Nebraska, UCLA's, so we'll go 4. Rutgers, I could see them beating 5. I'm not high on Michigan, but I think they'll probably. I think this is crazy because I think Iowa is a better team than Maryland, but this is kind of just how the schedule plays out for them. I see 3 wins. I see a win in between week 6 and 8. I don't know if there's 2, but I see a win in there somewhere that gets you to 4. Rutgers, I see as a win, and you have to win that game. That's 5, and I see Michigan State as a must-win game for them. I think their floor, surprisingly or not, and I'm not really high on this Maryland team, is 6-6. I think that's kind of their floor. You got to get to 6. I don't. I mean, I'm overestimating that they're going to win between weeks 6 and 8. The Washington, Nebraska, UCLA stretch. But surely they're going to pick off one of those teams, right? Because those are all inconsistent teams. You got to come away with one. So Maryland, I think their floor is 6-6. I think that's probably their ceiling too, right? I can only see them beating 2 out of those 3 teams in that 6 through 8 week. Um, and if I had to guess, it'd be UCLA and Nebraska. I don't know if it would be Washington. I don't see them beating Wisconsin. I don't see them beating Indiana, Illinois, maybe Michigan, if Michigan isn't as good as they're ranked to be right now. So so we had so let's look at the losses. Wisconsin's going to be a loss. We'll give them 1 loss there in the middle. Indiana and Illinois are both losses. I think the best they can finish is 8-4, so they have a really narrow kind of ceiling and floor. 6-6, I think, is kind of their floor. They're like the minimum expectation you need to get out of this season if you're them. And then the 8-4, I think if you get to 8-4, if you're Maryland, you're very happy because I don't think that this team really has that high of a ceiling. And if I had to guess, I think they're probably around that 6-6 mark. I don't really know that I'm giving them those 50-50 games. Michigan, get to Michigan. A lot of high hopes for Michigan this year, by the way. They're going to win their first game. Oklahoma, I don't see them winning it. It's truly going to be a 50-50 game as well, though. So I'm not saying that's the minimum. But I look at the first 4 weeks, and 3 of them should be wins, at least 3 of them. You get through your next slate of 5 games. I think, obviously, you would like to take Michigan over Michigan State and Purdue easily. I do think those Wisconsin, South Carolina, or not South Carolina, USC and Washington stretch can get a little tricky. We'll say they lose 1 in there, so they're at 2 losses for the season. Oh, I'm thinking of it as like best case scenario at the moment. Hold on. They need to. Worst case scenario, you got to go 3-1 to start the season. Worst case scenario in your next stretch, I think you've got to win 3 of those games. I don't know, probably Washington or Wisconsin. I don't see them beating USC. They could go undefeated in that stretch. So we'll say 2 losses there in the middle. We'll say they lose to USC and Wisconsin. That puts us at 3. I don't see them beating Ohio State to end the year, so 4. I think 8-4. I think 8-4 is really what you're looking at here with Michigan as their bare minimum for this season. If you get to 8-4, I think you're good. I don't know if they're going to get much higher than that. Oklahoma can be. I could see them winning that game. USC, I could see them winning. Wow, I do not like what I'm about to do. I think their ceiling is 11-1 also, like Illinois. I could see Ohio State realistically being their only loss. I think it is a tricky schedule. And 8-4 you'd be happy with if you're Michigan. Obviously, you want to be in the playoffs, but not everybody gets to make it, right? But I could see a world where Michigan gets the job done and gets to 11-1. I'm not high on this Michigan team, but everybody else is, and if you really buy into it, I don't think it's that crazy to think Oklahoma is going to lose to them. I don't think it's that crazy that USC, Washington, Wisconsin, not any of them can pick up a victory over them. Ohio State, it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell, I ain't going to lie. Michigan State. Let's get to Michigan State. Ooh, Michigan State plays Boston College. Wow, that's a tricky game. I don't even know if they'll win that. I can't say that's a must-win for them because I don't know that they're going to win it. Um, Minimum, though, he got 2 wins in the first 3 weeks. This team is going to be... Wow. So I think here with Michigan State, this is gonna be the first like really low ball. I give Iowa a really bad 4-8 as their floor. Seems really disrespectful, but like I lean a lot towards their ceiling than their floor. Michigan State, on the other hand, I'm looking at this. I see 2 wins guaranteed, and then you're gonna have to convince me with the group of Nebraska, Minnesota, and Maryland that they can win one. I'm not convinced that they can win more than one of those games. I'll barely even get them to 3. I don't even know if I would take them at this point. I'm gonna say 3 is their floor, which puts them at 3-9. Not a very good season, but their ceiling. Let's look through it. I think Boston College is winnable. I don't necessarily think I would pick them to beat Boston College, but I think it's winnable. So there's 3-1 to start the season. Nebraska's winnable. That gets you to 4-1. UCLA can be winnable. 5-1. Indiana's now. I don't see them beating Michigan. I look at this. USC is definitely a loss. Michigan, Indiana are definitely losses. Penn State's going to be a loss. That puts you at 4. Iowa's going to be a loss. 5. The best they can finish is 7-5, and I tend to think they're going to be much further down on the totem pole than that. So I have their floor at 3-9, and their peak at 7-5. I tend to believe that I am looking at this. I think this is about a 4-win team, a 4 or 5-win team. I'm not very high on this team. Minnesota, Hey, I'm going to give Minnesota the benefit of the doubt for this video. They need to beat Buffalo, but if you've watched any of my like top 25 ranking videos or any content leading up to this season, I am all in on this Buffalo team. I want to believe. I think they might be not necessarily the Boise, because Boise came out of like nowhere, right? Or not Boise, because Boise didn't come out of nowhere. Buffalo, though, has a favorable schedule. Minnesota might be their trickiest game of the year. And I don't think Minnesota's that great, but anyways, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. I think Cal, they're going to have a freshman QB. JKS is going to be their QB. You should win that game. Should be 3-0 to start the season. Rutgers, I don't know if it's a must-win. Purdue's a must-win. 4. Michigan State, I think, is a must-win. 5. Nebraska, 6. Minnesota, I think their floor. I don't even really like that 6 for Minnesota, though. I'm not really buying this Minnesota team this year. I look at this and I think their floor is 6-6, but just because I just don't believe in them, I'm gonna make it 5-7. I'm looking at their schedule and it's telling me 6-6 is like the bare minimum. I'm gonna say 5-7 because I don't trust it. I don't trust it. Let's look at possibly their ceiling here, though. 3-0 to start the season. Ohio State, you're not going to win. Oregon, Iowa, you're not going to win. 3, Wisconsin, you're not going to win. So another 8-4 team. Another 8-4 team kind of as their peak. I don't see it. I don't see it being there. I think they might be a 6-win team. I don't want to say that's the bare minimum, though, because I think they won't even hit. I'm not even confident they're going to hit that. I'm not buying Minnesota stock if they overachieve and get to like 9-10 wins. Props to them, right? I'll tip my cap towards them, but I just don't see it at the beginning of the season. Nebraska. Let's get to Nebraska. We got Cincinnati. I don't think that's a must. It is like you want to win the games, right? But it's not a game like I guarantee they're gonna win. They're going to win weeks 2 and 3 easily. You should beat Michigan State 4. Well, that puts you at 3, actually. I think they should be. I don't know if them or Maryland's going to be an interesting game. Either way, their next stretch, they should win 2 out of those 3, Maryland, Minnesota, or Northwestern. I think if you're Nebraska, you need to win 2 of those 3. So that puts you on the season 1, 2, 3, 5. Nebraska 5-7 also. 5-7 I think is their floor. I can't justify that they should beat UCLA and Iowa, which were kind of the 2 teams that I'm thinking in my head. Their peak, though, I think is very favorable because they do play a lot of like weirdly inconsistent teams. Cincinnati's not a team I buy stock into. Um, so starting off, I could see them starting off 4-0, best case scenario. I'm not, like I told you, I'm not really buying this Michigan hype, but a lot of people are. They could start off 5-0. Michigan State. They could get all the way to Minnesota 6-0, and actually to Northwestern 7-0. USC, I don't see them beating. UCLA, I could see them beating. Penn State, I don't see them beating. Iowa, I could see them beating. Nebraska's weird. Wow, this is a really interesting. They're 10-2 as their peak. I think they might have the widest spread, 5-7 and 10-2. That's kind of shocking. I think Nebraska is an interesting case, though. I think they'll probably end up around that 6-7 win mark, but that's kind of like I said, this is just the minimum versus like if everything goes right for them. I think they'll be somewhere in the middle. I think they will. But 10-2 is for Nebraska is crazy. And just in my head, hearing Nebraska 10-2 is wild. But I'm looking at the schedule. Okay, they're winnable games. They're winnable games. Does everything go right for them like it went for Indiana last year? Maybe. But we don't know. Northwestern. Northwestern is next. Tulane's not it's a winnable game, but it's not a game I typically favor Northwestern in. I can see them starting off 1-2. You should beat ULM. So there's 2 wins. Purdue. Okay. I can't really even confidently say they beat Purdue. But what I can say is UCLA is inconsistent at times, and they'll have a QB that also is inconsistent. Purdue, Nebraska, Michigan, who I'm not high on, but I think they'll win. So we're not going to include them in that. And then Minnesota, another team that I'm not super high on. We will say that they could get to. This feels disrespectful to say 3 wins, but where's the 4th win coming from? Like minimum, I think 3. I don't know that they get to 4 because I look at this week 2. I think that's Western Illinois. Is a win. It should be a win. ULM should be a win. And then I look at UCLA, Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota. They'd be lucky to get 2 of those games. I'm gonna say 3-9 is their floor. Feels really disrespectful, but Nebraska. I'm not buying Nebraska or Northwestern stock this year. I'm not gonna do it. Tulane, winnable. I don't think they're gonna win, but for the peak, we'll say they win. Oregon, they're not winning. I'm not even gonna give them the benefit of the doubt in all the games I just said. UCLA, Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota. I think the best case scenario is they win 2 of them. So that puts you at, let's say they just win UCLA and Purdue. We'll just say that so when I'm counting it's easier. The first 2, 4, 5. Wow. I think their peak is like 5-7. 5-7 because I can look at they're not going to beat Oregon. They're not, like I said, I'm just going to take UCLA and Purdue. They're not going to beat Penn State. They're not going to beat Nebraska because we're not giving it to them. They're not going to beat USC. They're not going to beat Michigan. We're not going to get Minnesota because we're not giving it to them. And they're not going to beat Illinois. Yeah, 5-7. They could. I mean, 5-7 is a really bad line. They could easily outperform it if they can maybe, I don't know, knock off a couple of those teams I don't think they'd beat. But 3-9 and 5-7 is to me that looks like I'm probably gonna think that they're the worst team in the Big Ten. I don't know if that will stand because Purdue still has to come, but at the moment, Northwestern is the worst team in the Big Ten according to just kind of what I think their ceiling and their floor is. Ohio State. Let's not lie to ourselves. Ohio State. I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna tell you their ceiling's 12-0. I've been really high on this team. I think they can beat Texas week 1. I don't see Michigan as a threat. Penn State gets tricky, but Ohio State is able to have their number, and it is a home game, which is very very important to them. Now to look at like the floor of this, I think at worst, if you're Ohio State, you have 2 losses, Texas and Penn State. You should not be dropping to Illinois. You should not be dropping to Michigan, Washington, any of those tricky Big Ten teams. You should not be dropping to any of them. I think 10-2 is the lowest possible result for the Buckeyes. Yes, there's some tricky games in there with some teams that could be ranked, Wisconsin and maybe UCLA if they're doing good, Michigan. You need to go 10-2 minimum if you're Ohio State. Oregon, my team here. I'm gonna look at you and tell you the same thing. I think 12-0 is the peak. I look at this schedule, and the only loss that possibly presents itself is Penn State. Penn State's the only one that I think is a true 50-50. Everything else you should be favored in. I will say, though, that between Indiana, USC, Washington even, and maybe even Wisconsin in there, I could see a loss. So I think Oregon is in a similar spot. I think they'll have an 11-win season, but 10-2 I think is kind of the bare minimum for them. I don't think 11-1 is. We ain't gonna say 11-1 is the bare minimum. I think Penn State's losable, but they do play some tricky teams in there, and I do think they could lose them. Ohio State, when they play those tricky teams, like, do they have any common opponents that is like Washington? I think they'll handle business against Washington early in the season, but it's a rivalry against Washington for Oregon, right? So could potentially maybe lean their way. Penn State. We'll get to Penn State now. Penn State, once again, I want to say 12-0 because this is my because I've been revising my top 25 here and there. I think this is my preseason number 1. It's been back and forth between them and Ohio State. I think it's going to be Penn State. I don't know if I'll make a video on that, but I really am buying Penn State stock. I think they're going to be really, 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 really good. I could see them beating Oregon. I could see them beating Ohio State. Can I see them winning both? I don't know. I think their ceiling... Do they win both? You know what? I will say it's possible. It is possible. We'll say their ceiling is 12-0. If it was Oregon, Ohio State back-to-back weeks, I would not give them the benefit of the doubt. They do get a bye week before each game. They will go into each game with rest. Penn State peak is 12-0. Now, floor. I look at this. Oregon and Ohio State are your 2 big tests. Once again, a 10-2 floor. Should not be dropping games against UCLA, Iowa, Indiana. I don't care if they're tricky Big Ten teams. You're a potential preseason number 1. Penn State cannot be losing those games. 10-2 is their floor. Purdue. Wow. I don't want to talk about Purdue. Talking about Purdue is a sad reality. 2-0 to start the season. Starting off good, Purdue. I gotta give them a better floor than 2, and it ain't coming in the first 2 weeks. Maybe Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Washington. We'll say they can win a game. I'm trying to be nice and give them a 3-8 or a 3-9. Yeah, this team could literally be a 2-win team. I'm just trying to be nice and throw them a bone here and say that they can be in this range. And then I'm looking at best case scenario. They should win the first 2. I think Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers with Washington are all games that they could win. So I'm talking best case scenario. I got to keep reminding myself that. I don't think they win all four of those games, though, in that stretch. Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Washington. I think they might win two. Four? Wow. I'm going to say five. I can't be that disrespectful to them, right? 4 wins is their maximum. I'm gonna say 5 and 7 is their absolute peak from what I think could happen this season. Now, granted, go prove me wrong, right? Like I'll tip my cap once again and say, you know what, Purdue blew away my expectations. I don't see much in this Purdue team. That's just the reality of it. And I probably would have said the same thing last year going into Indiana, right? So that is, these rankings don't really mean this is the end all be all. It's kind of just where expectations lie. Rutgers. I'm not necessarily buying Rutgers stock, but I'm not selling it either. 3-0 to start the season. That's what I'm looking at right now. 3-0. It's got to start 3-0. Minnesota is a game I think. You also play Purdue, which I'll give Purdue a 4. So that gets you to 4. Maryland and Minnesota, I think you could split. We'll say 5 and 7 is their floor. 5 and 7 is their floor. Now, best case scenario, they could beat Minnesota. So that gets you to 4. They're going to beat Purdue 6. Or my bad, 5. Maryland's winnable 6. Washington, Iowa, Illinois. You might get a game in there. So I'll say 7 and 5. 5 and 7 and 7 and 5. I think they'll probably be around 5 and 7, maybe 6 and 6. I don't see a wide range of outcomes for Rutgers, to be honest with you. UCLA is next. And this is a tricky schedule. Is that UNLV week 2? It's not fully in focus for me. I don't know if it is for you guys. Is that UC or UNLV week 2? It is, and you know I really like this UNLV team. Utah's in there. I'll say, if you're UCLA, you got to win 2 of those first 3. I might be picking Utah and UNLV over them, though, is the problem. I'm going to say you got to win 2 of those 3. You got to find a way to beat one of Utah or UNLV, and you should beat New Mexico. So 2 and 1. You got Northwestern, which is going to be a win 3. You should beat Michigan State to get you to 4. Maryland should be a win 5. Yeah, I think they're probably the bare minimum for them is 5 and 7. Let's see the peak though. I could see them potentially going 3-0. They're not going to beat Penn State. They could beat Indiana. Wow. They're going to also have a really wide range. UCLA. I'm looking at this and I see Penn State and Ohio State and one of Washington and USC as guaranteed losses. So I'm looking at a 5 and 7 or 9 and somewhere between the range of 5 and 7 and 9 and 3 for UCLA. I do think they'll probably be around 7 wins if I had to guess. But UCLA I think is interesting to watch this season. So this is also this kind of exercise does help us to kind of like know who to really pay attention to. Because if you have like a wide range of outcomes, kind of like Iowa, pay attention to Iowa. They could upset some teams, right? Get to USC now. USC should start the season off 4-0. Bare minimum 4-0 going into Illinois. Bare minimum. Illinois can be tricky. I'm not going to give it I'm not going to put them in the win category. Michigan, Notre Dame could be tricky. They do have to win. They're going to. So we had them 4-0. Obviously, Northwestern is a must win. So that's 5. And between UCLA and Nebraska, you got to get to 6. I think bare minimum is 6 and 6 yet again. I think they'll probably be better than that. I'm looking at this. I tend to think USC is probably going to beat Illinois, even though I hate to say it. I think they're better than Michigan. I don't think they're better than Notre Dame or Oregon. This is a 10-2. I think they're 6-6 to 10-2. A wide range of outcomes there for them, but I think they'll be really, really good this year. Washington. Obviously, I got beef with Washington. But they should start the season off 3-0. 3-0. John Mateer is no longer at Washington State. Should not be an issue for them. Maryland, Rutgers. You should win both, to be honest with you. So I'm going to say there you got to go 5. You got to beat Purdue 6-6 yet again. 6-6 bare minimum here if you're Washington. Best case scenario, I could see them Ohio State as a loss. Oregon as a loss. 10-2. 10-2. I want to be disrespectful and say, oh, they're going to lose to Illinois and Michigan. I don't think it's that one-sided. I think Ohio State and Oregon are just games that the talent just blatantly favors one side. But Illinois and Michigan, I think, are susceptible. Wisconsin, wow. I didn't even realize they played Alabama week 3. Should have started off 2-0 going in there, though. They need to be 3-1 going into their bye. Wow, their schedule's not easy. Their schedule's not easy. They need to be 3-1. They need to win one of Michigan, Iowa to get to 4. Washington, Indiana, Illinois, they're going to win one of them, maybe 5, 6-6 yet again for Wisconsin. So Wisconsin, their floor is 6-6. I might be pushing it a little bit there, just giving them the benefit of the doubt. What is their ceiling? I don't think they're beating Bama. I don't think they're beating Ohio State or Oregon. And I think they will lose at least one of their final 4 games, probably to Indiana or Illinois. So that gives me, what is that, 4 losses? So that is an 8-4 record. So that wraps up kind of what I think is the floor and the floor and the ceilings of each team in the Big Ten. We are going to be doing the same thing tomorrow. Not sure if it's going to be the Big 12 or ACC yet. SEC will be Thursday for sure. Friday we will have. I've already actually filmed my Week 0 video, but that is going to be the day that it comes out. But yeah, so just looking at this in general, it's clear to me who the top 3 are: Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon. I'm looking at the next group. Michigan is probably the next best. I'm going to rank it based off just bare minimum, and if we get to it, we get to it. So let me for you that are sticking with me, thank you. But let's get it. So I've always had Penn State. Not always, for like the last couple weeks I've been Penn State number 1, Ohio State number 2. I got Oregon 3 in the Big Ten. All right, then we got to get to our next highest floor team, which is Michigan at 4. Do we have a 7-win team? No 7-win floors. So that's your top 4. That's your top 4 that are going to be over 500, not just at 500, at bare minimum. Then we're getting into the group of kind of really boom or bust, I guess you could say, which we got to look at the 6-6 teams. So let me just mark those. Okay, so we have the 6-6 teams marked. Illinois peak is 11-1, so Illinois at 5. We have Washington and USC tied. I do think USC's going to be better, so we'll put USC then Washington. Do we have another 10-2? Indiana. Indiana's another one that peak is 10-2. So Indiana after Washington. Then we have Iowa. Yeah, we have Iowa. Then Maryland and Wisconsin both peaked around 8-4. I do like Wisconsin more. I also think they're going to win the head-to-head if they have one. I don't even remember if they do. Maryland there. So we have all of those taken care of. Let's cross them all out. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. So now we go to the 5 and 7 teams. Rutgers, Minnesota. I think Minnesota. No, Nebraska. Because Nebraska's peak is very high. Because I don't know why. I did that, but Nebraska. Cross off Nebraska. Minnesota. Nope, it's going to be UCLA. It's going to be UCLA. UCLA. Then Minnesota. Minnesota. I think Rutgers is next. Yep, Rutgers is next. Do we have any 4 wins? Oh yeah, because I put Iowa high. They're 4-8, but they're gonna be above. They're gonna be above those teams. I'm not putting them below UCLA and them. Michigan State, Northwestern, Purdue. Michigan State has the 7-5 potential. I don't think that's gonna hit, but they have the potential. Northwestern and Purdue. Pick your poison, man. It's going to be brutal. We're going to go Northwestern and then Purdue. So there you have it. There is my kind of most expectations, the least is Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Illinois, USC, Washington, Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin, Maryland, Nebraska, UCLA, Minnesota, Rutgers, Michigan State, Northwestern, and Purdue. That wraps this video up. Thank you for watching. Let me know down below if you see anybody being the Indiana of this year. Now, maybe it's Minnesota. Maybe Purdue has something cooking up, right? You never know. You never fully know until we start to see these teams on the field. This is just baseline what I think could happen. It's going to be somewhere in that realm, and if not, then I got to tip my cap at the end of the day. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.